Good afternoon and welcome to this YouTube channel. My name is Bart and let's talk about my build for the Great Guitar Build Off 2021. Now, if you watched episode 1, you'd be aware that I spent some time designing the guitar and then prepared the neck and body blanks. At the end of it, I said that in episode 2, I'll have to resaw the maple top that I have for the body with a handsaw. And I thought I would use my Japanese saw, the Ryoba. Well, just a few days ago, I realized that my Japanese saw is too short to cut through the width of that plank that I have. So I had to go buy another saw, and even though it's a rougher saw, it was hard going. And you'll see very soon. So let's get to the build. If you watched the last episode, you probably watched me plane this piece of timber that I said I would use for the body. I'm having second thoughts. This piece of mahogany is about 47 millimeters thick after I've planed it. In the pre-built video, I was talking about either using just this piece of mahogany or using a top for it to go with it, and that would be this piece of maple. I've decided now that I would like to use the maple on top. Now the only problem is maple now is about 32 millimeters. Now let's say I cut it in half, plane it down. It will be somewhere between 10 to 13 millimeters. If I were to add 10 to 13 millimeters to 47, I'm looking at a very thick body. And working with hand tools, there isn't going to be an easy way of getting this piece of mahogany thin enough to cut it down the middle. So do I just go with the mahogany or do I put the maple on top? Well, I would like to use the maple. If I use the maple, then what am I going to do with this huge, very thick body? So I'm thinking, instead of using this piece of mahogany, let me use something else that's a little thinner to go with the maple. So what I have is this piece of ansana. Now this is currently 20 millimeters thick, about 150 millimeters wide. Ansana is a local tree. Well, it grows in this region and it goes by a number of different names. Ansana is what it's called in Singapore. Apparently it's also called Malay Paduk and has a few other names. But since I have this nice piece of wood, which has a nice smell as well, why don't I cut this down? And it's square, so this would be easy. I won't have to resaw it. All I have to do is cut it to length that I need to put it together with half of the maple. The only issue I will face then is if I have 20 millimeters for this, which goes on the back, and I get about, maybe the best I can get is 13 millimeters because it's got a little bit of a bow, and if I take that out and plane it down, cut it in half, I'll have to plane it. Let's say I can get about 13 millimeters. I'm looking at a body that's about 33 millimeters thick, which would be a bit on the thin side. Not impossible though, so that's where I'm leaning. Is that where I'll end up? I'm not sure. So I'm going to leave the back for now and start work on resawing this piece of maple first. Today is Wednesday, the 17th of March, and as of now, I have less than half of this maple plank that I need to resaw for the top of the guitar sawn through. So with another halfway to go, or a little bit more than half as you can see from this side, I've taken this afternoon off from work to try and get this done. Wish me luck. After about an hour of sawing today, I still have a little bit more than a third of the way to go through this plank. But you see that cut there? It hit me. I don't really need this entire length of maple for the top of the body. All I need is about 350 to 360 millimeters. So I'm going to saw it across, and then I should be done with resawing within the next hour or so. So let's get on with more sawing. It's Saturday morning, and I have a few hours to try and do a little bit more work on my build before I try to finish editing the video tonight and maybe tomorrow morning and posting it by tomorrow afternoon. So on Wednesday I took some time off work to finish resawing the maple for the top of the body, and now I've got to continue planing it flat. As you can probably see from this, I didn't do a fantastic job of resawing. It's a bit rough, well, very rough on parts of it. But you know what? I don't really need to get both sides completely flat. What I need is one side flat, whichever side will be jointed to the rest of the body, because I'll need to shape the top anyway. I'll need to carve it, so it doesn't need to be flat to begin with when I'm going to take the material off eventually. So I need to plane one side flat and the two halves to it. And once I do that, then of course I'll need to joint the edges. And once I'm done with that, hopefully I'll still have some time to cut the material for the body, the timber that I've chosen for the body. Well, first I have to make a decision on which one I'm using. Am I going to stick to the mahogany, which will end up with quite a thick body, which I'll need to plain down, or do I go with the ansana or nara? If that's the case, then I'll have to cut it to length and glue it up. So let's see how much I can get done today. I better get working. After spending all that time resawing this maple plank into two and planing it flat on one side and, well, relatively flat on the other, I realize I have a problem. And that is when I put it together. Okay, so this is the piece that runs through the middle, it's the neck and runs right through the body. And this is the piece for the fretboard. If I place it on top with the design that I have right here. And I was going to use it either with this piece of mahogany, which I'll have to cut through half on this side, half on this side. If I were to place this maple on top of that, of course it's going to be thick here. If not, I was going to use it with this piece of ansana or nara, it's called. Now, either way, if I were to use that for demonstration purposes, I'll just put this on this side. Notice something. The best part of the grain of the maple would fall outside of my guitar. The best part of the grain here would be wasted, and it's the same on this side. So let's say if I were to put this here and put the design on top, notice the best part of the grain is wasted. I think it's a shame to use the maple this way. So I was thinking, what if I were to put it right through into the middle, so it goes right to the center line, and of course I would have to cut away part of this middle piece and let it sit down flat with the rest of it. And even if I were to do that and I place the design up here, so it'd be something like that, some of the best bits of the grain lost as well. So I think it would be a shame to do that. So what are my options? Well, option number one would be to redesign the body slightly. So maybe it extends out a little bit more, change the shape so that some of the nice grain that I have ends up on the body and not as waste timber. Another option, of course, is despite all the work that I did with this, not use it for this build. Does it mean it goes to waste? No, not necessarily. I could always use it for another build. which means I'm back to using this piece of mahogany, cutting it down the middle, one piece on this side and one piece on that side. But that's not the only option that I have. Well, those are not the only two options that I had. So I went to look at my stack of timber to see if there's anything else that I can use. Well, there might be an option or two. So I have this piece of mahogany. It's a nice long plank that I had. Let's put it down here. So it's not bad at all, is it? Now, if I were to use this and this together, then I would have a decent thickness for the guitar's body. It would be a total of about 42 millimeters. And I could use half of it on this side and half of it on that side. And actually, if you look at it, that's not a bad piece of timber to have as the top of the guitar, is it? And this mahogany piece is quite nice for the back as well. And the best part of this is both of these are relatively square, so it'll be quite easy to prepare them for glue up. Just cut them in half and use on either side. Use the maple for another guitar. And that's option number 3. What about option number 4? Well, let's just leave this here and go to option number 4. Option number 4 is this piece of Nara. So this is a nice thick piece. It's about 50 millimeters and it's got relatively nice grain as well. Now if I could just use half on each side, that would make a nice body as well. And 50 millimeters would give me plenty of leeway to carve the top and maybe even the bottom and still have a nice decent thickness for the guitar. So I have 4 options. 1, use the maple, change the body design a little so that I can use the best parts of the grain of the maple. Option number 2, forget about the maple completely, use it for another build and go with the mahogany that I'd initially planned to use. Option number 3 is to use, well, again, is to forego the maple, use it for a different project, and use the a different plank of mahogany with this thinner piece of Nara, or Ansana as it's known in Southeast Asia. Option number 4 is to use this piece of Nara or Ansana. What shall I do? This episode's all about decisions and sawing, and looks like I will end this episode without having made this decision, because I think it's good for me to take a bit of time to decide which way I'd like to go. Because if I go with option 1, changing the design, that's gonna change things from, well, episode 1, and it would be the same with any of the other options here. I suppose if I wanted to stick with the design, it's option 2, 3, or 4. If I wanted to go with the maple, then it's option 1, but I don't think that's the best option. So despite all the work that I did with the maple, I may not use it on this build. Let's see what happens. Thank you for staying with me right through to the end of this video. So the next week, well, it won't be next week. I think it's safer for me to say it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks between videos. By the time we get to episode 3, at least I'll be able to start shaping the body and shaping the neck and getting it looking like a guitar. And I haven't even talked about what I plan to do with the top or the back. I'm thinking of some carves, inlays. We'll have to find out in episode 3. So see you in the next video. And of course, if you're also taking part in the Great Guitar Build-Off, leave me a comment, let me know, because I'd like to watch your builds as well. So good luck with the build. Take care. Have a good day. I should say, take care and have a great week.